Okay, this is lesson 18. Jesus is the Son of God. It's 7 points that show that why Jesus is the Son of God. And we'll start with a video right here.
You're reading the Bible?
Yeah.
Dude, why are you reading the Bible? For class?
No, I just...
Okay, so you're just reading the Bible. You're just sitting here in a coffee shop in the 21st century using state-of-the-art technology to read ancient myths for no reason whatsoever.
Well...
Tell me something. Are you one of those super religious people who thinks Jesus actually rose from the dead?
Well, I do believe that.
Do you also believe in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, unicorns, Bigfoot? Ever been abducted by aliens? And do you buy into all those other ancient myths about dying and rising gods invented by primitive nomadic tribes back in the Bronze Age?
No.
Okay, so what's the difference between Jesus rising from the dead and all those other fairy tales?
Here's the difference. My belief in the resurrection of Jesus is rational. It's based on historical facts.
Facts? What facts?
Well, first, Jesus died by crucifixion.
Whoa, hold on. We don't even know if Jesus existed. Why should I believe your facts?
Well, because the 5 facts I'm going to give you are backed by so much historical evidence that most professional critical scholars who study the subject accept them as true. That includes skeptical atheist scholars.
Okay, so Jesus was a guy who actually existed and then got himself killed. So what?
That's the first fact. Second, his disciples were convinced that he rose from the dead and appeared to them. Third, Paul, a sworn enemy of the early Christians, suddenly became a Christian. Fourth, Jesus' skeptical brother James also became a Christian. And fifth, the tomb where they put Jesus' body was empty.
And those are well-established historical facts.
Right, but you can't just leave it there. These facts demand an explanation. Otherwise, you've got a big hole in human history.
Okay, here's an explanation. They all lied. It was a conspiracy, the most monumental prank ever perpetrated. His followers stole his corpse from the tomb and then started telling everybody he was alive.
That's the conspiracy theory. The problem is it doesn't explain the facts. How do a few spineless fishermen, cringing in fear for their lives, subdue a bunch of well-armed, professional Roman guards, roll away a 2-ton stone, steal a body, then hide it from a city swarming with people trying to find it? And why would they do it? The disciples had absolutely nothing to gain by lying about Jesus' resurrection. In fact, they were persecuted. And we have good historical evidence that 5 of them were martyred because of their claim that Jesus rose from the dead. Apparently not a single one of them ever recanted. People don't willingly die for something they know isn't true. They were there. They knew whether it was true or not.
All right, another theory. The disciples thought they saw Jesus alive after he died, but it was just wishful thinking. They were stressed and just kind of hallucinated.
The hallucination theory also lacks explanatory power. 500 witnesses saw Jesus at the same time, and the disciples touched him. Psychologists have shown that hallucinations don't work like that, nor does this explain the empty tomb.
Okay, look, maybe there's some other explanation, but the bottom line is dead people stay dead. Rising from the dead would be a supernatural event, a miracle, and science has proven that miracles don't happen.
Oh, really? When did that happen?
I don't know. I just kind of heard it somewhere.
Science has not disproven miracles. In fact, that would be impossible.
Why?
Science deals exclusively with natural phenomena, physical matter and material processes, right?
Yeah.
But a miracle, by definition, is not a natural phenomenon. It's supernatural.
So
a supernatural event would lie outside the boundaries of science. It's logically impossible for science to throw out any hypothesis that lies outside its boundaries.
Why have I never heard this stuff before?
I don't know. Maybe because it's scary?
Scary?
Yeah. As long as Jesus rising from the dead is just a fairy tale, like Santa Claus and unicorns, it doesn't threaten my little world. But if it's a fact, if he actually did rise from the dead, that's huge. It's a total game changer. And that's why it's so hard to think about it objectively.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Big whoa.
Okay, that's a great video. And how do you know that Jesus is the Son of God? How do you know if Jesus rose from the dead? This is life's most important question to determine when you spend eternity. So it's worth investigating. Not only that, you need to be able to make a defense and a presentation about it to other people, to influence other people. This would be a great speech to give in class or a great report to do for history. You could just use this PowerPoint here. Okay, so no one has seen God at any time. The only Son, who is God, has explained him. So we can't understand God. He's so great. He's too great. But we can understand him through Jesus, because that's what God is like in the form of a man. Christ is the visible image of an invisible God. So to understand God, he's so great. Like I said, we can't understand him. We can understand Christ because he came as a man. So who is Christ according to that? Christ is the image of God. Okay, now here's 7 reasons, here's 7 evidences that Jesus was the Son of God. Number 1, there's investigators who tried to disprove Jesus Christ. They wanted to get rid of him and disprove Christianity. If you can prove that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you can destroy Christianity. Okay, Simon Greenlee, the head of Harvard Law School, who wrote the book of law and how to courts should run and stuff, he took his investigative skills and tried to disprove that Jesus rose from the dead. And he put Jesus on trial, and the evidence was overwhelming that Jesus did live and rise from the dead. Dr. West and Lord Little were professors at famous Cambridge University in England, and they wanted to destroy Christianity and do away with it. So they took a sabbatical, a year off from teaching college, and with their separate ways to try to disprove that Jesus didn't rise from the dead. They came back together to write their book, and both of them asked Christ in their life because they knew the evidence was overwhelming that Jesus rose from the dead. Josh McDowell is a law student who did 700 hours of research. That's like 2.5 years of school time, and wrote the book More Than a Carpenter. And he's a famous Christian speaker. He was an atheist, and he's written 102 Christian books. It changed his mind. Probably the most famous one now, because he's still alive and around, is Les Strobel, is an atheist who took 2 years to study it and wrote the book, The Case for Christ. His wife became a Christian. He was a Harvard Law student, and he was a reporter for the Chicago News Tribune. His wife became a Christian. He had a drinking problem. He hated Christianity. He took 2 years to disprove it, that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, and he ended up asking God in his life. And one more, Sir Lionel Lockwood, who won 245 murder cases in a row, put Jesus on trial. Did he rise from the dead? And he was an atheist, and he said that the evidence is overwhelming that Christ rose from the dead, that leaves no doubt. So all these 5 guys tried to do away with Christianity. There's a lot more. They tried to destroy Christ, and they didn't rise from the dead. And they all end up becoming Christians. And here's a video clip of Les Strobel, who wrote the book, The Case for Christ, and made the movie, The Case for Christ.
There really wasn't a room for God in my relationship with Leslie when we were dating and when we got married. But you know what? We were happy. We didn't have any problem with that.
When I first started going to church, Lee responded very negatively. He basically told me that this is not what he had signed up for, that when we had gotten married, he had life planned in a way that did not involve church.
My biggest fear with Leslie was that she was going to turn into some religious prude or something, and I thought nothing good can possibly come out of this. But even though I had all these negative ideas of things that were going to happen, in the ensuing months, I began to see positive changes in her character and in her values and the way she related to me and the children. And it was winsome, and it was attractive. And so when she invited me to go to church with her on January the 20th of 1980, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go. Get her out of this cult, you know, that she's got involved in.
He did go in with his reporter's notebook so he could take notes and try to find the scandal.
Well, the pastor gave a talk that day called Basic Christianity. And he just systematically laid out what it is that Christians believe. And my mind was blown because I had all these misconceptions, and he really did straighten me out on a lot of things. And I remember walking out that day saying 2 things. First of all, I was still an atheist. He didn't convince me that day that God exists. But secondly, I realized if this is true, this has huge implications for my life.
Okay, next is his conclusion at the end of his 2 years of research, that he tried to disprove Christ.
There really wasn't a room. The evidence accumulated over time until November the 8th of 1981, which is sort of when I reached a critical mass. I remember going alone in my room, and I took a yellow legal pad and put a line down the middle. And on one side, I started to list all of the evidence I'd encountered for Jesus Christ being the Son of God. And on the other side, all the negative evidence against that. And I wrote and I wrote page after page. And finally, I put my pen down. I said, wait a minute. In light of this avalanche of evidence pointing toward the truth of Christianity, it would require more faith for me to maintain my atheism than to become a follower of Jesus Christ. And so that's the moment that I decided, consistent with the evidence, the most logical, the most rational step I could take was a step of faith in the same direction the evidence was pointing, and put my trust in Jesus.
Okay, he made a movie called The Case for Christ. He didn't make the movie, but the movie's about his life. It's on YouTube. You type in The Case for Christ full movie. It's on Netflix. It's a really good movie, really interesting, really strengthen your faith. So I'm going to play the movie trailer for it next.
If somebody were to do an investigation to Christianity, where would you start? If the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen, it's a house of cards. You sure you want to give me that loaded gun? I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger. I've spent my entire career as a journalist uncovering the truth until the day my life presented me with the biggest story of my life. I'm not going to lose my wife and my kids to something that I can't even reason with. What happened next changed me forever. How can we even talk about historical evidence for the resurrection? The Gospels are filled with contradictions. The empty tomb is based on evidence. And is it evidence you're trading? We all bet our lives on something. The question is, what's it going to be?
As much as I would like to help out a fellow skeptic, what you're proposing is impossible.
Could Jesus survive being spiked to the cross? There is no evidence of anyone ever surviving a full Roman crucifixion. Just because I write something down and I bury it in the dirt, that doesn't make it true.
But I felt there's something more real than anything I've ever felt in my life. I'm praying for you.
Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up? Stop blaming me and the church and God, and do your job.
No one's ever proven if the shroud is the actual burial cloth of Christ. But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, suddenly becomes a real person.
Okay, that movie is on Netflix and also on YouTube. You type in Case for Christ, the full movie. Okay, you could throw out the Bible and you can prove that Jesus existed and rose from the dead from non-biblical sources, from history. Cornelius, the most famous Roman historian, he writes about Jesus and the resurrection. Josephus, the most famous Jewish historian, who writes about Jesus and Jesus' resurrection. And like even Muslims, Buddhists, and Jews and Islam believe that he existed. We count our days by him. Why did they change the date to BC before Christ and AD after his death? We count our days by him. Okay, so you can throw out the Bible and still prove that he existed. Okay, a prophecy is a prediction. You predict something, and there's a bunch of predictions in the Old Testament about Jesus, and he fulfilled 300 of them. Okay, so 300 things were predicted about Jesus in the Old Testament that came true. Now, the chances of 8 of these, just 8 predictions coming true out of one, are like 1 in 100 billion. To count to 1 billion at 1 second at a time, it would take you 32 years. So that's like 32,000 billion years, all right? One and against those odds are just unbelievable that it has to be Jesus. If you covered the whole dry land of the whole earth with a 1-inch tile and put an X on just one tile, and it was facing upwards so you didn't see the X, and you randomly picked it out, that's the chances of only 8 of these prophecies being true. Out of 48 predictions, that's 1 in a chance in 7 trillion. Okay, or it's like picking an atom out of the universe, being blindfolded and randomly picking an atom and it being that. So I'm going to give you an example here. There's 7 billion people in the world. I'm going to say 7 things, and you can guess who it is out of 7 billion people. Okay, number 1, it's a male. Okay, we're down to 300.5 billion. Okay, they live in the Northwest. Okay, we're down to about 10 million people. They're a professional football player. Okay, we're down to 53 people. Okay, he plays quarterback. Okay, we're down to 3 people. Okay, he went to University of Wisconsin. Okay, there's 1 pro football team in the Northwest, the Seattle Seahawks. There's 3 quarterbacks and 1 went to Wisconsin. Okay, so I just said like 6 things, 6 prophecies, 6 predictions, and I narrowed it down from 7 billion people down to 1 person, Russell Wilson. So Jesus didn't have 6 things; he had 300 things. So the chances of not being him is just it's him and it's truth. Okay. So here is a video that explains that.
How do you know what's true is really true?
That's where the evidence comes in. Christ's offer to turn you into a new person is real if his claim to be God is true. So let's consider the evidence of 8 prophecies proving his claim is true. Do you know what the probability factor is of only 8 prophecies being fulfilled in Jesus?
No.
1 in 10 to the 17th power.
1 in 10 to the 17th power.
Huh? That's 1 in 10 to this many times.
I don't get it.
If you were to take 10 to the 17th power Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies,
How many?
that's over a quintillion cookies. And spread them across the state of Texas,
Yeehaw!
they would cover every inch of the state and form a pile of Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies 2 feet deep.
That's a lot of Thin Mints. A whole lot of Thin Mints.
Now take 1 more Thin Mint and lick all the chocolate off, toss it into that pile, and stir the whole thing up. Blindfold yourself, walk the entire state from Amarillo to Laredo, stopping just once to scoop down and pick a single blind Thin Mint cookie.
Got it.
Take off the blindfold.
I'm nice.
The chances of you picking the chocolateless cookie is the same as the chance that 1 person could have fulfilled just 8 prophecies about Jesus in 1 lifetime.
That's crazy.
It's unthinkable. But Jesus Christ did not fulfill 8 prophecies in 1 lifetime.
Whoa.
He fulfilled over 300.
300!
And 29 of them in just 1 day. The prophecies are historically documented. The facts that actually happened to Jesus are historically documented. There's only one thing left to do.
I know. For me to weigh the evidence. It's all part of the evidence.
Because if it is true that he is the Son of God, what he offers you, a new life in him, is real.
Now I know it's real, whether I believed it or not. It's all part of the evidence.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is real.
Okay, on this part 1, the evidence that Jesus rose from the dead, the 3 main points are: number 1, intelligent, brilliant people who are investigators tried to disprove that Jesus rose from the dead, and all of them became Christians and wrote books about it. Point number 2 is that you can throughout the Bible, and there's non-historical or non-biblical sources that explain that Jesus rose from the dead and that he existed. We count our days by him. He did live. No one disputes that he lived. And number 3, the 300 predictions about Jesus all came true. And you cannot count, you can make the math, that's such a big number, the chance of all 300 of those coming true. So in our next part 2, we'll cover 4 more reasons, the evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. He's real, we should follow him, he loves us, he's awesome. Have a good day.